And they all say the same thing to me. You are incapable of sticking at anything and you always think you know a better way. Don't call me and don't call any of the family until you go back to university. And with that, my mum hung up the phone.
I know that we have limited time. We'll structure the talk into, or the fireside chat into 3 segments. First, we'll delve into your entrepreneurial journey. The first question is that, in your entrepreneurial journey, for sure there were pivotal moments. For sure there were aha moments that really had a great impact in your journey. Can you share with us a story or what really had that great impact on you?
It's interesting because I think that is often the assumption. I think there's often an assumption that you are where you are because of a series of important, correct, significant decisions. But having sat and interviewed 300 or 400 of the most successful people in the world in their craft, having walked my own path in my own life, I don't think that is either a helpful or a realistic way to look at it. For me, it's really the small stuff. And my obsession broadly with content creation or entrepreneurship is focused on the smallest stuff. And I think that is a much more accessible, liberating way to look at your life. Your life isn't going to be determined by getting a few big things right. It's going to be determined by how you approach 10,000 or 100,000 small decisions. And that compounds your life either for or against you profoundly. And one example I can give you, which might illuminate this in a way that everyone can understand, is if you don't brush your teeth today, you'll be fine. If you don't brush your teeth every day this week, you'll be fine. But if you don't brush your teeth every day for 5 years, you will be screaming as a dentist pulls the teeth from your mouth. When did it happen? That's a really big thing for your teeth to be falling out of your mouth. When did it happen? It happened today. It happened today with a small, seemingly insignificant decision to do something or not to do something. And that tends to be what I see when you zoom out on life. But that's invisible. You can't see it happening today. And in life, the things that are easy to do, like saving $1, or brushing your teeth, are also really easy not to do. So I have a philosophy towards maximizing and optimizing for the small things today. And doing that over the course of 10 years means your compounding growth chart in any facet of your life, your hair, your skin, your teeth, your finance, your relationships, your business, your following, whatever you're doing, looks like this instead of that.
Was dropping out of college and the story behind your mother being upset of that, did it have a really impact on your entrepreneurial journey? And what's your philosophy behind it?
My mother, when I called my mother at 18 and told her that I was the first of her 4 kids to drop out of university after being there for 1 lecture, she told me that she would never speak to me unless I went back to university. And I think, in that moment, I had a great deal of empathy for her. And I completely understood. Because if you were a Nigerian woman that left school at 5 years, 6 years old, maybe 7 years old, and you could never read or write, and then you moved to the UK and you believe the path to safety and success in life is education,
yeah.
And then one of your kids tells you that they're not taking that path, and that's all you know, then I too probably would react in such a way. Someone once said to me, they said, if you were them, you'd be doing the same thing. And you've got to think about that. Like if I'd walked my mother's shoes with my mother's brain, I would be doing the exact same thing to my kids. I had a great deal of empathy. Never had an argument with her. Never held it against her. Off I went.
I would do the same with my kids. I can't imagine. But the new generation, you don't know what's happening with them.
Yeah.
If we look at the growth secrets that you had with Social Chain, maybe you can shed some lights on some of the tips and for the audience when it comes to the growth of Social Chain, because that's an amazing company that you did. Did you follow the same techniques or secrets when you released the podcast, The Diary of the CEO?
It's interesting. So the probably the most remarkable thing about my first marketing company was that we never had a sales team. And our clients were Apple and Amazon and Coca-Cola and you name the company, Logitech, Uber. We did their marketing across the United States. We never had a sales team. And the reason we didn't have to have a sales team was because we knew that it's a much better strategy in life if you're building an agency business to be a peacock instead of a salesperson, i.e. to attract the world to you. It's much easier to be a magnet. And the way that you do that is by telling really remarkable stories. So I would travel about 50 weeks a year. In 2019, I traveled 50 weeks a year. I was living in New York, running the business there. And every time I went to a conference like this, which I did 50 weeks a year, I would walk on stage. And instead of, when people come on stage, I'm going to show you a demonstration. When people come on stage, this is what they do. They come up on stage and they go like this. Hi, I'm Stephen and I'm from X marketing agency, and thank you for being here, everybody. I want to tell you about my marketing business. So here's some of the work that we've done, and here are some of our... And people fall asleep. They fall asleep because the brain is wired in such a way that it is receptive very, very quickly. It's trying to figure out whether it can save cognitive resources or not. It's receptive to emotion and surprise. This is why Mr. Beast is so successful, because in the first 10 seconds of his videos, he grabs your brain. He says, this is what Mr. Beast does on his videos. The first second of his video, I've put 500 people in that circle and the last person to leave gets a private jet. He doesn't introduce himself. So when I traveled around the world for 50 weeks a year, this is exactly how I entered the stage. This is exactly why you were expelled from school. You are incapable of sticking at anything, and you always think you know a better way. Don't call me, and don't call any of the family until you go back to university. And with that, my mum hung up the phone.
Oh my God.
And just in that opener there, the variance between the amount of people that were looking at me and how much attention that I had is so significant. I would then tell a great story. Throughout that story, you would learn about my business. You would learn that we were the best at what we did. And then I'd close off the story talking about my mother. But it was a story. It wasn't about our company. It just so happened that I ran a marketing business. But it was the most interesting story you've heard in your life about, so I think that was really pivotal, and that meant that we never had a sales team. We just had someone answering the phone. We never did outbound sales. Up until the day that I resigned as CEO, we never had to call a client because our strategy was on-stage storytelling and online storytelling in that exact way.
And you're following the same path for the Diary of the CEO.
The only thing I've learned...
Because you have a special entrance once you start each episode.
Well, I really believe that people underestimate the power of great stories and emotion, and I think they overestimate information. And one thing that I think is quite inherent to the Diary of a CEO is it's quite emotional. Yeah. It's quite deep. So that's a principle I have. The big difference that I learned over the last, I'd say, 3 years since starting the Diary of a CEO is I've learned the power of experimentation in a really, really profound way. It's something that I wasn't as clear on before, but in the last couple of years I've got really clear on. I've sat with Dan Yelek, who's the founder of Spotify. I've sat with Brian Chesky, who's the founder of Airbnb, and they all say the same thing to me. And then I read through history, going right back to the founder of James Watson, the founder of Dell, who was at one point one of the richest men in the world. I think it's James Watson. And then I looked through history. I looked at Jeff Bezos at Amazon. He became the richest man in the world. And then I looked through all of these individual companies like Booking.com. And what I found inherent in every single company and every single one of these people, even Tiger Woods, was this idea that experimentation is your strategy. And I'll shed some light on what I mean by this. But just to give you the context of the world we're living in now, if you're 11 years old today, Ray Kurzweil, who's one of the futurists, maybe the world's leading futurist, the best at predicting the future, says you'll experience a year's change in 11 days by the age of 60. If you're 40 now, by the age of 60, you're going to experience a year's change in 3 months. If you think about the speed in which the world is accelerating, and technology is accelerating, and the revolution of AI and all these things, it's not a useful strategy to think that books and other people's advice and talks like this are going to give you the answers you need for your business, because the answers are changing faster than ever. So the question becomes, how do you find the answer? How do you experimentation.
Yeah.
You have to outfail your competition. You have to outfail your competition to the correct answer. Don't take my word for it. Look at Jeff Bezos' shareholder letter, what he says. In his shareholder letter, this is a $2 trillion, $3 trillion company, he says, we have to be the best place on earth to fail. And none of you in this room probably know about the Fire Phone or Endless.com, these companies that failed at Amazon, but you probably know AWS, which is going to make them $70 billion this year. Jeff Bezos says, you just got to swing more, measure those swings, and keep swinging, because 1 in 9 of those swings that you make will pay for the entire failure graveyard. And AWS is a prime example of that. But as I saw this, I looked at how Booking.com had built their website. They said we used to sit around in rooms guessing what the correct answer was. Then we went to this conference about failure and experimentation. We came back, we built an experimentation platform. We conduct we conduct 100,000 experiments a month on this experimentation platform. They became the world's biggest booking website.
Nice.
The podcast is the same. Every episode is tested and experimented on about 400 times. I could go into great obsessive detail telling you the level of experimentation we do. I know how much a quotation mark gives me in terms of click-through rate on any podcast episode. I know the difference between using the color green and the color red. If this was a podcast now, and we had this conversation, as we're speaking, under the table, we have an AI recorder recording everything you're saying. I'm clicking with a trackpad that's underneath the table as you're talking to me. It's sending every sentence I've highlighted to my team. They test every sentence to figure out what's most interesting to the world.
And then you ask it.
That then becomes the title, the thumbnail, the description, how we edit it, the trailer, the temperature of the room when you walk into the room, the music that's playing. So Daniel Ek walked in. He's the founder of Spotify. He walked in and he went, "Oh my God, I love this song." I'm like, "I know. Swedish House Mafia."
So you're into emotions a lot.
I see our podcast as a science as an experiment. It's just one big experiment, and my objective is to remove all guessing.
You mentioned a lot that people uplifted you in many occasions.
Yeah.
And they supported you or uplifted you because of your young age.
Yeah.
That tend to shift people in saying that Stephen Bartlett is just where he is now in his position. He's a lucky man.
Yeah.
Do you see that that statement is true, or you're overconfident, or you're emotionally smart?
I just think it's none of my business. Do you know what I mean? Or maybe I am lucky. I'm so lucky. I was born in Botswana in Africa.
Yeah.
And I moved to the UK when I was 2 years old. I have parents that love me. I think I'm tremendously lucky.
Great. Since we're talking about emotions, let's go into some personal stuff. In your episode with Walter Isaacson, you asked him, and Walter is the man who spent amazing time with Elon Musk, with Steve Jobs, to write really, really a great biography. And by the way, that episode was amazing.
Thank you.
He asked Elon Musk whether he was happy. Now, it's our time or our turn to ask you, Stephen Bartlett, are you happy?
Yes.
Why?
Because I'm so grateful. And I think it's really difficult to be unhappy and grateful at the same time, so I assume that's why. I've always really struggled to communicate this to me, but I think my greatest privilege is this. I think my greatest privilege is waking up every day and feeling really grateful, always. When I was 18 years old and I was shoplifting pizzas to feed myself because my mum had disowned me and I had no money and I'd got those 4 credit cards and they'd overdrafted and maxed out, so I'd cut them up, I was as happy then as I am now. And I think part of that is being really excited about the future. I was absolutely sure my future would go one way, even when I had nothing. I was convinced. You see it in my diary. You see this kid that's absolutely delusionally convinced. And how can you be absolutely delusionally convinced that the future's going to be great and unhappy? You know, that's the way. That's the state I've lived in for 10 years. So yeah, I'm happy.
You're a very visionary person. So you entered into the digital marketing with social chain. You're, I think, one of the pioneers when it comes to podcasting. Everyone here thinks that you are predicting the future. So the question, what do you predict next when it comes to digital marketing or social media? With everything happening and the new trends that's happening there on social media, with the new even algorithms as well as the tools that the platforms they offer for content creators?
Here's my answer, and this is a really important answer, I think. So, I don't know. But,
You have to give us a real answer.
But, and this is the power of experimentation, is you don't have to know. Your team has to be the team that finds out first. And that's what our team, I can tell you, as I sit here today, how every social media algorithm works from a very high level. So how the YouTube algorithm works, how the Snapchat, YouTube Shorts, LinkedIn algorithm. I can tell you a way on LinkedIn to increase your engagement by 300% by adding one letter to your post. I can do all of that. I can't tell you how it's going to work in 6 months' time, but in 6 months' time, because our rate of experimentation and failure far dwarfs most people's, I will be able to tell you. And the same applies for social media. You know, one of the things I know for sure, because you can reason up from some first principles to understand what the future will look like a little bit, is that, you know the reason why I say I don't know as well? Because I spent 10 years obviously speaking on stage and I would give an answer to the question, but AI confuses everything. And I've sat with the people that are many times smarter than me, that are building billion-dollar AI companies, and I've asked them this question. And when they tell me they don't know, I am nobody to believe that I do. And we talk about AGI in this moment of singularity where AI will be sufficiently advanced. I sat with the author of *Sapiens*, Yuval, just two weeks ago and spoke to him about it. The answer is we don't know. The future is going to accelerate so unbelievably quickly that none of us in this room know, and that's why you need to fail more. We actually have a head of failure in our company. That's her job. She monitors our rate of failure, makes sure that we're failing faster and faster and faster. She reports to me every week and month on how many experiments we've conducted and how much we failed, and our job is to accelerate that rate. And that means that when the world does change, we'll be there.
I think we delved into the third part of this chat, which is the content creation.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of content creators sitting here in the room.
Yeah.
And to some of them, monetization is crucial. Monetization is crucial. That's good. Oh, be careful, be careful. Safety, safety.
Okay, safety first.
Safety first. What do you think some of the new innovative revenue streams that content creators should focus on?
Yeah.
Especially if content creation for those creators is their bread and butter?
So it's a really good question, and it's one that no one's ever asked me before. We have sponsors on the podcast, as people will know. Some of you will be able to know what those sponsors are. The key innovation in the monetization of our podcast is I am a shareholder in all of those companies. And the other sort of point that I think some people might find interesting is I called them. They didn't call me. So Whoop, Zoe, Huel, I'm a shareholder in those companies. So they sponsor the podcast. In many cases, I'm on the board of those companies. But most importantly to me, I'm a significant shareholder in those companies. And in some cases, my fund has invested in those companies. So in the case of Zoe, which is a company that's literally like going like this at the moment, I think it's, I can't share numbers, but I invested $2.5 million in that company. I'm an equity holder in the company. They sponsor the podcast, and I'm heavily involved in the business. When I look back on some of those deals that I did, the company could have paid me, I don't know, let's say 200K a month to sponsor. These are real numbers, but I'm going to cloak the name of the company. Could have paid me 200K to sponsor the show a month, right? Because I took an equity position and those companies have gone well, My brother, who runs much of my portfolio, said to me a couple of weeks ago, he was like, I think you're going to make either 20 to 50 million a year in hindsight because you took equity in those businesses. So if this particular company hits this target that it's currently outpacing, over 2022 and 2023, you would have made 20 to 50 million per year. The biggest innovation for content creators is to own the companies you promote. And the key thing I said there was I called them. The reason I called them was because I liked their companies, I used their products, and so I could authentically speak to my audience about it. And that was really key for me. I called Whoop, I called Huel, I called Zoe, because I thought they were amazing. They're all health and wellness related products, and the founders wanted to do business with me. So I think that's the most important thing.
What's the next company that you'll invest in? So
Oh,
that
gosh.
we give this insights to the audience if they want to invest in?
Oh, you mean like a public company? Oh, Jesus. Well, if you've got capital, logic does state that the best way to make money from that capital, the most surefire way for most people to make money is just to invest in an index fund. And I have a huge amount of money in an index fund, which is just basically a basket of different stocks. It's not super smart to be picking stocks. It's also not super smart to be picking crypto. I have a big position in Ethereum, but it's not super smart. Honestly, if you read one of my favorite all-time books on money called The Psychology of Money, I've interviewed the author, it shows that if you've got capital, put it into an index fund, and then if you don't believe me, and if you don't think 10% a year or 8% or 12% a year is enough, go on Google and type in compounding interest calculator, and you will see how a janitor, someone that was just cleaning toilets, died with 8 to 10 million in their bank because they invested their money into an index fund and just left it. Like I said earlier at the start of this, about the brushing the teeth thing, that's the same thing that happens to your money. If you put it in a place like that, a boring, slow place, you can make a lot of money. So a lot of my wealth is in index funds.
Great. As content creators, building a loyal community is very important. Can you share with the audience how the diary of the podcast, the Diary of a CEO, is, because you have an engaging community, how can they really, really build that engaging community and foster it and have it as a sustainable thing?
It's very simple, isn't it? For me, like, life, I think Einstein talked about how energy can't be destroyed. I think it was Einstein that talked about that. And if you want something back from someone, give them it. So in the case of the Diary of a CEO, we have very, very deep conversations. Sometimes these conversations are 2 hours, 3 hours long. They're about trauma. They're about,
mental health,
grief, mental health, right? You're giving a lot to somebody. So if the laws of energy are correct, you're going to get a lot back. If I was making 10-second videos about, 10-second joke videos, I probably wouldn't have a community that is that engaged and feels that bound to the brand as the Diary of a CEO community is. So I think it comes back to what you're giving people. That's what I've noticed anyway. Funnily enough, when Facebook Watch launched, which must have been, I know there's a lot of people from Meta here, about 8 years ago, I started making these 2-minute videos on Meta about random topics, love, relationship, etc. Those videos would average, the average, was about 10 million views per video. Not one person, I think one time, a young lady came up to me in the street and was like, haha, love you, Facebook guy. That was all, that was it. Then I started vlogging, right? And honestly, there was about 3,000 to 5,000 people watching this vlog. It felt like the entire world was watching. Because if I got on a train, if I got on a plane, people were coming up to me. 10 million views on Facebook Watch over here, no real feedback. 5,000 views on a vlog of my life, which is depth. It's showing you behind the scenes, everything. And it was like, I couldn't get on a train. So you imagine the Diary of a CEO now, we'll do 50 million downloads this month.
Yeah.
And it's long-form content. It's really, really deep. This is actually why I stopped doing the Facebook Watch videos and I started the podcast originally, because when the podcast was doing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 downloads, when I was recording it in my bedroom alone, not videoing it, I had way more passionate feedback from my friends that were listening, from the odd person that I'd bump into that had listened. It was like it was really helping somebody. And I'd never experienced that with these viral videos that I was making. So I dropped that, and I focused on this. Plus, I enjoyed this more, you know?
Sometimes creators, they face creative block.
Yeah.
They don't know how to create new content. Where can they get new ideas? I'm sure with the podcast, The Diary of the CEO, you might also face the same, or even the content that you create. How do you handle such let's say, stoppage or creative blocks?
Yeah, I think the question is, what is creativity, and how might it run out? I tend to think of creativity like, in front of you, you have a sky, and in the sky, there's lots of different clouds. Creativity is people connecting these clouds in new ways. It's taking that theatre show you went to, and then you saw a chair in a design museum, and then the 2 points of inspiration, maybe there was something about the colours of this rainbow chair you saw in this design museum, and then maybe that theatre show, they were using something with drums, and maybe you bring those two things together where you have this rainbow-coloured drums. That is the essence of what creativity is. It is connecting clouds in new ways. So how do I create more creativity? Well, the most obvious thing for me is I need more clouds in the sky. I need more points of inspiration. And where are they going to come from? They're going to come from the most unobvious places. Honestly, the biggest creative steps I've taken forward in my life were when I did something that made absolutely no sense. I spent a year working in the psychedelics industry as a creative director. Financially secure, I'd left my company had gone public. I decided, for no clear reason, to spend a year working in the psychedelics industry and help take one of the biggest psychedelics companies in the world, Atai Life Sciences, public. I just thought it was interesting. Like when I started working on a musical, I started writing a musical, which meant that I started going to lots of different musicals. I thought that was interesting. I've been DJing for the last 2 years on my kitchen counter. You've not seen me DJ, but you've seen our trailers, and you've seen the music that goes into trailers, the understanding of music and beats and rhythms. It's the unobvious things, the clouds you get from the most unobvious places that create your most valuable creativity. Steve Jobs is the best example of this. Before Steve Jobs made Apple, hardware was pretty ugly in hindsight. But Steve Jobs took a class when he was at university, I think it was a typography class, where they talked about fonts and beautiful typography and design. And we went from the BlackBerry, as consumers, to this beautiful keyboard-free panel of glass with this tiny little round button on. And then the user interface was absolutely stunning, like nothing we'd ever seen. That was because Steve Jobs went to a typography class and a design class, and so when he started Apple, he believed in and knew the value of design. So he went and got Johnny Ives. And when you look at someone's skill stack, it's always the unobvious stuff that makes them the best in the world at what they do. The things that are unobvious but complementary. And for example, in all of our industries, everyone in this room, for example, understanding public speaking or understanding music, these would add profoundly to whatever you're doing right now. They'd put more clouds in your sky.
The last question, because time is running.
Okay.
If we go back in time and you would start your content creation journey, would you still follow the same path that you are in now, or would you rather select another path, or maybe be specialized more in a certain discipline that you wish that you would be in?
I think I have to say I would follow the same path, because when you look at my story, what you see is someone that quits remarkably quickly and at really unexpected times. So I quit university after one day. I got expelled from school when I was 16 because I basically stopped going. I decided it wasn't going to work for me. Started a company called Woolpark, did that for 2 years, raised investment, quit out of the blue. That pivoted into the business called Social Chain, did that for about 7 years, quit completely out of the blue. What you're seeing there is I never overstay my welcome in a situation once I have that feeling inside of me that says, where I reach the end of my quitting framework. My quitting framework, very simply, are you thinking about quitting something? Yes. Why are you thinking about quitting? Either because it's really hard, I'm keeping this intentionally vague, or because it sucks. Hard is you're running a marathon, you're on the 25th mile, your body's hurting, right? Hard. The question then becomes, is the effort that you're putting into this hard thing worth the rewards on the other side? So if you're running that marathon and you're raising money for a charity that means a lot to you, and that's worth it, then keep going. But if you're running a marathon in any facet of your life and the rewards on the other side aren't worth it, there's nothing worse in life than doing something that is hard and meaningless. Then you quit. Go down the other side. You're thinking about quitting because it sucks. This could be you're in a marriage and he's an asshole, you're in a company and the board of directors are being horrible to you and you just don't like it. The next question should be, do you believe you could make it not suck? If it sucks, and you don't believe you could make it not suck, there's nothing you could do. You need to quit quickly. Don't overstay your welcome. Choose uncertainty rather than the certain misery of your current situation. If you believe you could make it not suck, the next question should be, are the rewards on offer worth the effort it would take to make it not suck? Going to marriage counseling, having an uncomfortable conversation with your boss. If the rewards are worth it, stay and fight. If you believe you could make it not suck, but the rewards on offer, even if you were to be successful, aren't worth it, then you have to quit. And that's been the story of my life. And listening to that internal compass in me has led me here. So I don't actually think there was anywhere else that I was going to end up. I think my one redeeming skill in life is being exceptionally good at quitting things. And so at 30 years old, I am where I am because I've wasted no years in a situation that isn't serving me.
That was so inspiring, Stephen.
Thank you.
So if you allow me, can we open the room for 5 to 7 minutes, quick Q&A? The organizers told me that we can get the questions through the mobile app. So whomever downloaded the mobile app can send their questions. Hopefully I know how can I get to the questions. I need help from anyone on the mobile. Or if we have, can we take it from the floor?
Hi.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi.
Sorry, but before we take questions, rules. The question should be short, straight to the point, and should be very great question. Please.
And very
the pressure
funny.
is on. Okay, so you talked about experimentation, and
Yeah.
of course you have a team head of failure. I think that was very interesting. How would you share the first steps to experimentation when you are working in a very small team, 1 or 2 people? How can you get started?
I think it's even easier. I thought you were going to say the opposite. I thought, how do you get when you've got a team of 1,000 people, how do you get them to experiment? And I'll answer both. In that case, it's not good enough for a CEO or a manager to stand in front of their employees and say, I went to this conference in Dubai and this guy went on stage, this podcast guy, and he said experiment, so everyone experiment. Because people act in line with their incentives, not in line with your commands. So you have to change the incentive structure. You have to reward people for failure. You have to therefore measure the rate of failure. You have to remove all the bureaucracy that stands in the way of people taking risks. And it's a real inversion in your company where you start celebrating the fact that you ran the experiment, not the outcome of the experiment. Because the outcome of the experiment, if you start penalizing or rewarding that, will demoralize this part, the input. So in our company, the reason I measured the amount of failure and the amount of experiments, I didn't say I measured how many we succeed at, is because this is the controllable. So get into the habit of conducting experiments, make sure they follow the scientific method, which means you've got a hypothesis, you're measuring one clear variable, right?
One variable at a time.
One variable at a time, but this is a big thing, because when I say this to people, what they end up doing is they leave and they just start guessing, measuring nothing, just changing stuff. We'll just change the color of this. Be clear on what you're measuring and how you'll know if it succeeded or failed, and start now. Your current rate of failure, let's say it's 0 this month. Try and beat it next month. And keep a document as well. So this really helps. So everyone in my team, when they have an idea, they can just speak to our head of failure in our public Slack channel or whatever and say, what about this? What if we change this 10 seconds of this thing here, and then we'll take the idea, put it in the experimentation document, which is prioritized based on which experiments we want to run first, and it's stored there. Then you'll see this culture of people throwing ideas in, you know, and it's all about reinforcing that behavior positively, celebrating failure.
Can you give
Thank
us
you.
just
No,
quick
sorry.
Oh,
We're really running out of time. We're really running out of time. Sorry, I'm so sorry. We are really running out of time. The organizers, they're sending me WhatsApps that we are running out of time. Thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you so
you
much.
very much. It was so inspiring. Glad to have you.